like in the ninth grade, hey, like 10th is like super important. Then you come into 11th, and then yeah, 12th is very important, and IIT, JEE, and all of these things are like super important to give.
The rat race for engineering or whatever it is starts at ninth standard, when in reality, these days it's not ninth standard, it's seventh or much below than that. See, it's not that there isn't opportunity, there isn't way to do it in India. There is. But you have to recognize that you cannot paint a broad picture and say that today life in India is easy. Tum karna hai, kar lo. This is the best place in the world. This is the greatest thing in the world. For you, if India works, well and good. For someone, if it doesn't work, let them live their life, no?
I think inflation concept is somehow non-existent in India because of how crazy the population is. Like you can always get somebody to work for you at the same like price, and you don't have to raise the salaries because you can get somebody who can do it for cheaper.
When you become responsible for washing your own underwear, washing your own clothes, and cleaning your own room, and making sure that you know when your next meal is coming from and how it's going to come from, you will immediately learn the realities of life.
So today's podcast is a little bit special because I have Kowshik with me, and Kowshik is somebody who is going to do an internship in my dream company, which is Porsche. So that was something super interesting for me to hear from him. And he's studying in TU Braunschweig. He comes from Goa, and he has been working in the Big Academy alumni team for almost 3 years now. And so we get to talk about different kind of topics, what kind of topics are a little bit disturbing to the students because we get a lot of emails too. So we want to kind of like speak about all of these things with the context of somebody who has come to Germany, who has learned German, who is now going to be working in a super special company. So, Kowshik, welcome to the podcast. Give us a little
Thank
bit
you,
background
thank you.
about yourself, other than what I already covered, and let's see where we go from there.
That's a good way to bury the lead. You just put up this thing straight up on the intro itself. Yes, I did land not an internship, it's a thesis at Porsche.
Mhm.
But yeah, we can get into the details of it much later. Like you introduced to me, and I guess a few people would have seen me on the channel. I'm Kowshik Sivatsan. I'm doing my master's in computational sciences and engineering at TU Braunschweig. I'm going to start my sixth semester by the time the summer semester starts. And yeah, that's the journey. I come from a small place, Goa. I live in a small place, which is Braunschweig. Comparatively, it's kind of feels like the same thing. So yeah, I guess we can talk about the differences in what you have experienced in India and how
Mhm.
what you experience in Germany. But at the same time, for someone who comes from a very Portuguese influenced
Mhm.
location, like yesterday, there was the carnival here. The weekend which we have is the carnival, and exactly the same time, there's a carnival happening in Goa also, which
Mhm.
means that it's culturally a lot of things I've already seen. So culturally, a lot of things are very similar here. But yeah, we can always see what the differences and similarities are. But yeah,
Mhm.
I'm really excited to start a conversation. And yeah, like you said, we always have a lot of emails that come in, and we want to talk about a lot of things with students. So yeah, you can lead the way. You can start the
Yes.
conversation.
So, Kaushik, tell me about the story of Goa because I actually, when I was in the Goa for my meetup, I thought like, okay, a lot of people are going to come, but in the end, only like one person was there, and he also, I think, drove 30 kilometers with his bike to meet us in a restaurant or something. And that was in 2018. So like the channel was like absolutely zero. But from him, I got to know that like about this Portuguese influence that
Yeah,
most of the people also try to push to go to Portugal,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you growing up in Goa, so were there like thoughts about like rather going to Portugal because a lot of people were going there, or was it no, like I want to figure out my own things?
Let me frame it in two different ways. So, just as a small historical context of how Goa came under Portuguese, it's people would say, yeah, the British ruled India. So, what's the difference there? But the difference is the British, the East India Company came in the 1600s, but they didn't technically start ruling till like the late 1700s or the early 1800s. The
Mm-hmm.
difference is in Portuguese, when they came here, it was pretty much about the occupation. So they were ruling Goa for 450 years. Can you imagine? 450. So in
Ridiculous.
that sense, it's very much ingrained into the culture of Goa. A lot of a lot of people who converted to Christians or Catholics, you can see their roots are still in the Hindu culture, which was there. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of traditions are very common. Carnival is not a religious festival, although you can say that it's a very Western influenced festival. It's not a religious thing for them. It's just a cultural thing. So they just come out and celebrate it like it's nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like growing up for me, the it was already, I am not from Goa technically
Mm-hmm.
though. My parents moved there. Technically, my dad was there since the 80s, I think. Yeah, he moved for
Okay.
work opportunities, and then once he got married, and my mom and my dad both lived there. So I was basically brought up in Goa, but culturally I'm from Tamil Nadu. So there's always been a mix mash of cultures for me.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in a community where it was a lot of Rajasthanis, a few Gujaratis, a few people from Kerala, a few people from Karnataka. So it's always a hodgepodge of cultures. So I never felt at home, let's say, either when I was in Tamil Nadu or I was in Goa. It's just, it's always been a mix of cultures. So for me, the influence which you're talking about, like a lot of people wanting to go to Portugal, that comes mostly from these native Goans who have the opportunity to obtain a Portuguese passport, right? So if, for example, your grandfather or your father was alive and was a Goan before 1961, that's when Goa got its liberation, then you definitely had the chance to obtain this citizenship, and you can give up, renounce your Indian citizenship and take the Portuguese passport. And then with that, a lot of people used to come to Europe. Even then, the weird thing before Brexit was a lot of people used that to get into UK also. A lot of my friends, their fathers, all of them were in the were either working in the merchant navy or they were in some company in the UK. So that was always the route, but it was mostly for people who wanted to, who had a lineage in Goa.
Mm-hmm.
So there was never a consideration for me to go to Portugal. And of course, it also helps that your family knows the language, or your family is at least is influenced by the language, right? So because
Mm-hmm.
I studied French in school till eighth standard, you had the choice to from eighth standard you had the choice to change languages. So I chose French. So if you were inclined to go to Portugal, you would have chosen Portuguese. So
Mm-hmm.
in that sense, I was never about going to Portugal for that matter. Yeah.
Right. Because the main story comes, for example, even in India, right? My surroundings were growing up in Haryana, right? So in Haryana, what most people do is they want to go to Canada, Australia, mostly Canada and Australia, and then like US comes for the people who are like generally a little bit richer or a little bit more ambitious. Canada, Australia is more like, this is the mediocre stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I'm going to find something to do there for sure. So, like, that's
Yeah.
the general, like, safer choice that I saw. And if you take a look at the Gujarati community, like, for them, like, the most important thing is, like, going to Goa, right? Like, for them, like, nothing else, like, comes into question most of the times. Then you see the Malayali community, most of them end up in Dubai or like Middle East or
Middle
something.
East.
So
Yeah.
many people I
Yeah.
know, like so many Malayali people who are like just like, there because other people went there. So like that's what I find extremely interesting, that how much of maybe where we end up being is maybe influenced by other people. In my case, uh, like if I think about it, like I was also influenced because that when I was 2 years old or something, at the 3 years, 2.5, 3 years of age, we were in Freiburg, in Baden-Württemberg, and my father was working as a scientist there in the University of
Mm-hmm.
Freiburg. Um, and we lived there for around 2.5, 3 years, something like that. So that was the time when I started going to kindergarten, right? And this is the time when you have your first few flashback memories. You cannot really remember an
Yeah.
entire like scene,
Yeah.
but somehow you can remember some kind of like pictures here and there, like that, like maybe that happened, and so on. So like my influence was from that time when like things were extremely nice in Germany. Everything was super clean. It was relatively safe. Like if you leave your bicycle outside or something, like nobody's going to come and steal it. And like for me, it was like paradise when I like compared it to India when I came back. That teachers were more lenient in the kindergarten. Like they let you do stuff. Of course, it is kindergarten. It is not a
Yeah.
school, but even in the school, like in Germany, what I like found out from people afterwards, like things were just a little bit different. Then a little bit like further pressure came when I think about the time of our 10th and 12th, right? Like, so
Mm-hmm.
it essentially starts in ninth itself. Like,
Yeah.
in the ninth grade, hey, like 10th is like super important. Then you come into 11th, and then, yeah, 12th is very important. And IIT, JEE, and all of these things are like super important to give. And I somehow, Kaushik, do not remember. I don't have any kind of like memories which I'm happy about. like from this time, like from ninth to 12th, is it's a little bit of a black hole that I just like do not want to like remember, because it was more about how much time you're spending locked inside your own room
Mm-hmm.
than it was about um what vacations did you go on? What kind of trips did you take? Like, did you go like hang out with your friends? Did you go visit another country? Things like that, which I see completely different here. Like, I see people having the time of their life during their
Yeah.
teenage years.
Yeah. No,
For
you
us, it's
kind
just
of,
a, yeah,
I mean,
black hole.
no, what you kind of gave away a hint at how old we are, because I also agreed when you said that the race, the rat race for engineering or whatever it is, starts at ninth standard, when in reality, these days it's not ninth standard, it's seventh or much below than that. So that clearly shows how old we are, that because at the time when we were studying, it was still ninth standard was considered to be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I see that's the biggest question, right? Are you a product of nature or are you product of nurture? And it's that biggest philosophical question that they always keep asking. And I think it's like a mix of both, right? Because for me, nurturing aspect of it was that the parents, because they didn't get chance to study, they didn't get chance to educate themselves and work in an industry which valued education. So they always insisted that education is the most important thing for you, that is the key for you to succeed. But at the same time, they were not pressuring me that you have to get this, you have to get that. They recognized what my ability was, what my level was, and then just said, do to the best of your potential. Like, if
Hmm.
you know you can study well, if you know you have interest in this particular line, make sure that you give your best in that line. My dad was only about, did you do better than what you did last time? Is there someone who did better than you? And can you get to that level? That's it. I always used to complain to him, Dad, look at this. Like, the 10 people got below me. I'm like, no, he doesn't care about that. He's like, can someone get better than you? And can you reach that potential? That's all. Do you have it in you? And he's never like, itna hi chahiye percentage, utna hi chahiye. It's never like that. Whereas the nature aspect of it, I would say, again, going back to the conversation about Goa, I would say it's a very different culture living in Goa, maybe not now, but in the early 2000s, than living in the rest of India. Because there's a term called Sushagad. Sushagad means you're late to, wait, what is it? Yeah, late to rise and early to bed makes you a successful man in Goa.
Hmm.
It's exactly opposite of what the US culture is, right? It's
Hmm.
because the life is very chill there, right? They're very self sufficient, I would say. Everything and anything they need can be attained or can be achieved within living in the 40-kilometer radius.
Hmm.
They for them, when they marry off their daughters or marry off their sons and they say मैंने दूसरे गांव में शादी करके दिया, गांव is 25 kilometers away.
Hmm.
Whereas imagine my mom, when she was getting married to my dad, it was 790 kilometers away or 800 kilometers away. So for them, the aspect of it, when you said, right, you only one person came to meet you when you did a meetup there, I wouldn't be surprised. The exposure to going abroad for studies is increasing now because of the, again, the rat race of IIT JEE. There's an IIT and an NIT in Goa, and there are, in all, including IIT JEE and the local ones, there are 8 engineering colleges, 8 or 9, I think, at this point.
Hmm.
So that rat race has started now in the past 5 years, I would say, since I graduated, and much more today. But in that sense, I would say people were not that exposed. If your family was well off to do and you had some connections, you know that you can go to the US, you know that you may be able to go to the UK. But beyond that, no one talks about this in class, right? For me, I didn't know about Germany as like coming as a destination for studying till one professor said, "Oh, okay, do you know when a Mercedes goes by? I'm so amazed by it because I don't hear the sound. Whereas
Hmm.
when you see a Maruti or some Tata Indica go by, I can hear the sound coming from miles away." So he was amazed by that. When he talked about it, I'm like, oh, can you actually go to Germany? And then you research and you find out and do it. But I would say in my batch, when I actually decided 2 years later to come and study, I don't think anyone came to Germany. For that matter, I would say 5 or 10 people went to the US in that sense, out of a class of 70, right? Whereas if you see in other more populous states, more populous cities, more where there's a lot of exposure, there's people like 50% of the students straight away choose that masters is the way to go, right? It's all
Yeah.
about the access to information, right? I don't know. I'll tell you, I'm exactly 1 month and 10 years from when I first had internet connection. I got my first internet connection when I was in 11th standard. For me, the world opened up only after 11th standard.
Mm.
After I finished my 10th exams, I was chill. 2 months I was off vacationing with my relatives, and there
Mm.
was this wedding, that wedding, this ye karna hai, wahan jana hai. When I came, everyone is like, "Hey, did you know there's a new IIT coaching center? We already took admission." I'm like, "Wait, when did the results come out?" मैं तो
Yeah.
बस chill कर रहा था. I didn't even know IIT was a thing. And then luckily in that 1-2 months I was running around finding out ki kya karna hai. So like that exposure I think is the major thing which people lack, and that's especially true in Goa. Was in true in Goa for a few years. Now it's not because of the proliferation of people wanting to study abroad and all that. But that's the biggest question, right? Is it what you are exposed to, or but then there are still people who don't know all these things and still they come out and they achieve, right? They don't know anything about their family is in a very remote village and still they find out the best information. So it's also about motivation, I guess. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's a bigger conversation which I guess you'll never have an answer to.
No, I actually find this conversation extremely interesting because I discussed about this video with my brother recently, but I think like I wanted to also take your opinion on this. So there was this guy, right? I will play the video.
If you have money, India is the best place to live. 20 years ago, for all aspirational folks, the best ticket for a good life was apply for masters outside India. Is it still true today? I don't think so. Most of them are more like economic migrants, right? You didn't have opportunities here for the skill set and you had a better life outside. But today, salaries are on par. Your saving potential will be much, much higher in India than in the West. Because in the West, it is kind of saturated. Apart from very few roles, the tier 2 cities, you can get a high-end flat for 20,000 rupees rent or something like that. The savings potential is quite huge. And also the quality of life is also much higher in India. If you have money, India is the best place to live. You get, 5 maids and a driver and everything is taken care of. In the West, you can't do that. People are now probably thinking that's not the only route.
So, like to me, like this dude is like from these chump statements he made, like he became my lifetime enemy, even though I absolutely don't know him. And here's the funny thing, Kaushik. Like I definitely want to take your opinion on this. And I actually, the first time I watched this video, I thought he must be living in India in Bangalore or something. Then I saw this on his LinkedIn. Sid Cup, England, United Kingdom. And this jump, like sitting outside, probably like made his life outside and is now kind of like influencing people that, hey, like, don't worry, like, don't go abroad, like, you stay in India. India is the best country to live in. But I'm telling you all of these things either from abroad or like from my short trips that I make to India. And I
Yeah,
want you guys to stay in India so I can afford you guys for cheaper money or something. And you can
yeah.
have 5 maids and one driver. Dude, like what kind of like disgusting fucking like mentality is that? Like I don't know, like I'm just so
This
pissed about this entire
See,
clip.
this is the problem with everyone having the ability to do a podcast, right? If you are a nobody, you can still do a podcast. I mean, I am a nobody, right? I'm still doing a podcast. The problem is the growth of people wanting to speak and the growth of people being able to actually say, I know how to dissect information is gone. If you listen to his clip again, you can see that a part of what he's saying is true, right? If you have money in India, the comforts which you enjoy, the creature comforts which you enjoy in India, you can never enjoy in the West, right? Yes, he may said it in about maids and drivers in a very not so PC way, but
Mhm.
just think about that. You may want to pay your domestic help more than how much you would normally, right? But if you have money in India, stuff happens for you, right? Creature comforts are amazing for you, but the big but is if you have money, and the if you have money is not the middle class money, it's much more than the middle class money, which is where he falters. He says that this group category of people are earning more, right? He gave some list of what
Mhm.
IoT architect and all of that. Yes, those people earn a lot of money, but it's not easy to get into those kind of positions because there's so much competition, right?
Yeah.
Every other random person you find in Bangalore will be doing the same thing that you are doing. If you're somewhere in the tech space, everyone is going to do the same thing. See, it's not that there isn't opportunity, there isn't way to do it in India. There is. But you have to recognize that you cannot paint a broad picture and say that today life in India is easy. Tum karna hai, kar lo. If you want to live here, you can live a happy middle class life. It's not possible. Not everyone has the opportunity to do, first of all, let's say a decent living. And second thing, there's this another point which I saw was that in the industrial ages, right, in when the industries came about, why did people stay loyal to their employers? It's because it was about survival. How bad your employer treated you doesn't matter if you don't work at these companies. you will not survive, right? So it was about survival. That's why they stayed loyal to you. The next is around the IT boom phase. Why did they still stay loyal to the employers? It's because now they're let's say they needed to pay EMIs, they needed to buy a house, they needed to buy their phone, their whatever, the car, they needed to feed their dog, whatever it is, right? So they still stayed, but it assumed, you can say that it looked like it was loyalty. In reality, it was never about loyalty. It was about survival, right? Today's generation has evolved beyond that. It's not about can I live and make a survival. It's about, is this job satisfying me? Am I achieving some higher purpose? Am I doing something which means something much bigger than myself, right? Is that Maslow's triangle, right? You, once you satisfy your basic needs, you start wanting more and more until you reach self-realization and claim for this higher purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of an environment and that kind of group of people, you cannot tell them you stay in India because you have all this opportunity which is available to you. They want something different, right? See, it's not only about the number of jobs and the pay which a job has in India, it's also the type of jobs. We are still very service based industry, and not everyone wants to do services, right? People want to innovate, people want to do R&D. You just look up the budget that we spend in India for R&D, it's nothing. It's abysmal, right? So you cannot claim these things without giving the full context. And I think it is upon the person who's giving the podcast or the fact to actually make these things right, because ऑडियंस ऑडियंस को डिफरेंशिएट करने के लिए तुम्हें सिखाना पड़ता है. Audience will not know that. Audience will lap up whatever you tell them. Audience is smart. They will figure out eventually. But some people are just coming to it for the first time, right? They may get deceived by what you're saying. So it's upon the guy who's giving the information to actually fact check and provide the full context.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, the question comes like the list of professions that he put up are very limited. I found some very interesting like comments there actually. And one comment like directly spoke to me because that was exactly the situation which I had, and that situation was Kowshik what now? 8 years ago. And this was this guy who was getting into civil engineering or something. Look at this one.
Mm-hmm.
The YR97. So should be around my same age too, 97
Yeah.
and 95. Utter bullshit. I'm a structural engineer. The base salary is 15,000 rupees start. After masters, if you are not an IIT, not at IIT, then you get 45,000 max. 20,000 rent and left with 25,000. Five maids.
No, you can
Like,
still pay your maids. It's just that you have to live on the road then.
you'll be begging from your maids and the driver for like
Yeah.
food. Then what about the savings and about things? Like
Yeah.
I actually like found a lot of comments here actually like completely opposite to what he said. For example, they were talking about lack of order, cleanliness, pollution, corruption, racism, and chaos. Then they were talking about here you can exploit human resources with just a few thousand rupees. And then another one was I think at the bottom, when you can have five mates, it doesn't mean that India is the best place to live. It means India is a poor country where many people are available with no proper education and work. So I just the comment section that here like that really surprised me because many times when these kind of videos come, what these people bait for are people who are like ultra nationalists. They're like India is the best country, Indian food is the
Yeah.
best food, Indian culture is the best culture, Indian airlines are the best, Indian prime minister is the best, Indian just everything is the best, right?
Yeah.
So I think like this guy was maybe like kind of fishing towards that direction, but the kind of people like who watch this video was a little bit different, which I actually also really believe. Like, look, in my civil engineering profession, never in my life, I would have gotten the salaries that this guy is talking about. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the peace of mind either. Like, okay, maybe you can have like decent jobs with mechanical, with some kind of like, computer programming side. Like, then it becomes easier for you. For computer science people, it's anyway super nice. For us civil engineers, Kowshik, it's ridiculous. Like we are like treated almost like laborers in India.
I mean, I'll tell you from someone I know. Let's say, let's not go into who it is, but someone I know is working in the big data space. Okay, in Bangalore, they have, let's say, 8 to 10 years experience. They're earning upwards of 35 to 45 lakhs a year. Yes, you can earn excellent amount of money in India. 35 lakhs is will take you a lot. Imagine if two people, if you're married and both of them are in the same industry, you're earning close to a crore a year, right? Which is a lot of money. But you have to recognize that it's not those traditional fields which are valued. Those are those new hyper, like, I wouldn't say creative, but like hyper focused courses about data science and
For
computer
sure.
science, which is, yes, a lot of people are going into these and you can have good opportunities. But what about the people who don't want to study that, right? For a lot of people like me, it's not about the money that you make, it's about what work are you doing, right?
Mm,
If it's not in the same line of interest, why will you want to go into computer science? And still to this day, I can tell you, I know my colleague from my previous company, he's around 10 years experience. He's earning less than a third of that 35 lakhs. And he has much more experience than the other person, I'll say. Right?
mm,
So doesn't matter, because if you, and that 10 lakhs, 12 lakhs you can earn in mechanical engineering if you're either, let's say, at a very good OEM, which is very difficult to get into and rise up the ranks, or you're in some service in company like a TCS or an Infosys or a Wipro. If you're in any other company, which is like a medium scale, small scale company, you're you're fried. You're not going to get that much money.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That
I
is why
mean,
I like the Mittelstand culture which we have here in Germany, right? So even if, regardless of what profession you are, it is possible for you to earn decent wages and live that middle class life, and at all scales of businesses. It's not only that you have to work at a Siemens or you have to work at a Bosch to, live a amazing life. You can work at one small company which is owned by some person for 200 years or their family and still earn like enough to be very comfortable, live a middle class life. And to your point about this hyper nationalistic thing, I have never understood. Maybe it's because of the way I was brought up or the place I grew up. I never understood putting so much of your passion behind one idea of a place, right? It's not, it's, don't even talk about India, just go within India also. People have problems within cities, between states. Like my state is better than yours. There is no place in the world which is great. Every place has its downsides. I'm not going to sit here and tell that Germany is amazing. There's so many downsides to Germany also. But at the same time, you have to recognize what are the individual strengths of each place, right? If you look at the broad demographics part of it, India is so strong because of its youth, right? But at the
mm,
same time, the youth or the potential of that youth will, if it's not tapped properly, what's the use of having
yeah.
that youth,
Yeah.
right? So it's not about saying that this is the best place in the world, this is the greatest thing in the world. There's never greatest. It's exactly what works for you. For you, if India works, well and good. For
Yeah.
someone, if it doesn't work, let them live their life. No, let them find some other place. Let's say you find one, these find this 215 or less than 200 people living in Antarctica, right? Why do they want to put themselves through that torture of living in Antarctica when they're surrounded by penguins? But because they enjoy that, right? For them, the best place to live is Antarctica because they love the research which they're doing. You cannot tell them, why are you living in Antarctica? You should come and live in Brazil or something, right?
For me, the problem also comes from like listening to people like these, like who themselves built their business abroad. Like this guy, like I checked the LinkedIn again. The company is mentioned to be in London, United Kingdom,
Yeah,
since 12 years and 10 months, whatever. And dude, like this, I find a little bit hypocritical because you didn't make it in India. You made it after you went abroad, and now you are
exactly.
telling others to stay in your own well and don't venture out because if you venture out, you're going to get expensive, and if you're going to get expensive, it's going to squish the profit margins that I have for my company and so on. So the thing is, Kaushik, like about the story with the influence, I really think like there are both kind of influences. There, like everybody is trying to influence you towards a direction where maybe he sees his own benefit or he genuinely believes like there is
Yeah,
some good happening. That both kind of like people who exist there, like
yeah,
who got improved through XYZ journey themselves. For example, this guy, like I would completely understand if he would tell me his story that hey, I came to United Kingdom, I did this and this, and then afterwards I got this done, and then afterwards that's how I started my company. That's like a believable story for me because you
yeah,
are the living proof of that. But now you telling me about something which you haven't done yourself, like that is not something I can like really stand behind. um and also, to be honest, like when I really see the difference between the salaries, Kaushik, at that time I was thinking like 8 years ago, 12,000, like that was bad.
yeah.
But dude, like right now, 2024, 15,000, that is bad.
It's not changed.
Yeah.
It was some form of an economic forum or something where I heard this, where these two journalists are asking this person from either TCS or don't quote me on this, some one of these big recruiting companies. They asked, why has the base graduate level salary at the entry level salary not changed in the past 10 years? 10 years ago, when my cousin graduated in 2013, she earned 25K a month. Okay. Today, if you graduate and join something like TCS or Infosys, you're still earning 25K a month. How is that going to be enough? Like, इन्फ्लेशन कॉन्सेप्ट कुछ है ही नहीं क्या इनके दिमाग में? Wage
Yeah.
prices don't match inflation. And to your point about where this person made success and why
Actually, I want to
he's,
I want to break you in the middle real quick. Sorry.
yeah.
I think inflation concept is somehow non-existent in India because of how crazy the population is, right?
Hmm.
Like you can always get somebody to work for you at the same
Yeah.
like price,
Yeah.
and you don't have to raise the salaries because you can get somebody who can do it for cheaper.
In my first semester in bachelor's in 2014, my social sciences professor, he told me, I met this very intelligent man through the 4 years of some person up there, some student, former student, through the 4 years of college. And once I met him outside, he's like, "Sir, I don't have a job right now." And then a few months later, I met him, "Sir, I'm doing a job for 15,000." He's like, "But you're such a brilliant student. Why aren't you getting a better opportunity? Why don't you leave this and try somewhere else?" He's like, "But if I leave this job or if I ask for more money, there are 15 people who can do this job for 10,000. Why?" मेरे 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 खाने मतलब मेरे पेट पे हाथ मारने जैसे हो गया ना कि अगर मैंने खुद छोड़ दिया तो पैर पे गुलाटी मैं ही मार रहा हूँ. I will let go and go. And to your point about making it, the guy telling his own story of where he made it in the country, like he went in to the UK and made it. I really like this quote from Shah Rukh Khan once when he said in an interview, like, "Don't philosophize till you are successful, right? Let others be successful and then let them become a philosopher. Till
Mm-hmm.
you're hungry, till you're having the drive to earn and become successful, don't listen to other philosophers. It doesn't work."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's just like a very important thing which irritates me a little bit because I know, okay, like this is also a bias. For example, like for me, like life really improved like after I came abroad and I saw the working culture. I saw how chilled out things are. Of course, I was not happy about the banking. I was not happy about the paperwork that I had to do. I found it really ridiculous, like how many like documents you have to fill, how many applications you have to file, and so on. When I started my business in Germany, I was not happy about it either. In the starting, it was great, but like then it just got absolutely ridiculous. Like every single week, you're getting like letters from the Finanzamt, and you have to constantly fill the same document that they already asked like two, three times before, but they just
Yeah.
want it again. The same with the Techniker Krankenkasse. The same thing, like that you are a student, that you are earning this and this much. They just want to know again. Like they will ask you four times in a year, and you cannot do it online. You have to like use your pen and like
Yeah.
write things on their paper, and then post it back. So these were the things, for example, that I didn't like, but I really loved that I did not have the pressure of working from 7 to 7, and I don't know, like also nobody's going to call me on a Saturday or Sunday and ask me to do something. These were the few things that I was like, like, this is what I think is very nice when you can have some time for yourself, nobody disturbs you, time for the family, and so on.
Yeah. To your point about the documentation experience which you had in Germany, right? And this goes back to the point which I was saying earlier, that no place is the best. It's what fits for you the best, right? I've been here for almost 2.5 years. I have had no issues with any government authorities about any documentation. Like you would imagine that living 2.5 years, some form of letter would come, something would come, right? Yes, a lot of theft came, but everything was very smooth for me, right? And see, just between you and me, both living in Germany or both having studied in Germany as students,
Mm,
there's so much disparity, right? Like
yeah.
I have found that maybe it's there was because of its Braunschweig or something. It's so smooth for me. And
Hmm.
like getting an appointment in Auslandersbehörde for extension of visa or something, I don't have to do anything. They will only send an email 3 months before, say, please send these documents. Once I send that document, let's say 3 weeks later, they'll say, okay, you have an appointment date about 3 weeks before your visa expires. I go there, within 2 minutes, I'm done. I have to sit in the waiting room till they call me. I go there, I give my documents, and they're like, okay, fine, sign this, pay this, you're done. And then 6 weeks later or 4 weeks later, they'll call me again to collect the card. It has been so smooth.
Mhm.
It was smooth during the pandemic also. It was smooth after the pandemic also. And I know people, because we do alumni emails here,
Mhm.
I know people who write to me saying that I haven't gotten an appointment for 6 months. I'm like, what the hell? If tomorrow I want an appointment, I'll get an appointment here, right? It's that
Yeah.
simple for me. So that's what I'm saying. It's even within students of same, let's say, same background, same level, studying in the same type of courses, but across Germany, you see so much disparity. So you cannot make these broad-based statements and saying that just because three people I know are living amazing lives as graduate students in India, that their life is amazing. But at the same time, and harkening back to the person saying that um, people go outside, they struggle, right? There's this very narrative ki jo bhi bahar ja raha hai, they'll struggle. And this
Mhm.
I saw in my own family. Like I never heard it from me directly at me, because it was the pandemic, and by the time I reached here, I didn't get in touch with anyone. But I heard through the grapevine that this comment was made. That why is this person going, everyone who's going outside is struggling for even food, and he's coming back and all of that. And literally last week I was talking to my parents about this, and I told my mother, it is true that I'm struggling for food. The only struggle is I don't know which amazing restaurant to eat at, or which different cuisine to try. That's the struggle which I have for food. And it's not about me not earning enough. I am earning enough as a Hiwi student here to live the most comfortable life that I can, which I never did as a full time employee, working 9.5 hours a day. I don't know, you say 7 to 7. For me, it was technically I had to leave the house at 8 because it's 1 hour away, and then come back by around 8. So, and I used to work 9.5 hours. And it was good experience to build up in the beginning, but I couldn't have done it for 15 years, 10 years. It's not possible.
Also, for people like who need some more time for their own, I think I really thought growing up, Kaushik, that my life would be extremely shit. Like think about the Bharat in ninth or 10th grade or something, and like making the first plans. I remember when I was 14 or something, I like, wrote in the diary that till the age of 20, I should be making this much. Till the age of 25, I should be making this much. Till the age of 30, I should be making this much. My father takes a look at that and he's like,
Not happening,
what kind
bro.
of job, like what imaginary job is this that you're like
Yeah.
planning to double your salaries like every 5 years or something? And I was like,
In one of my favorite sitcoms is Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and in that one character quits the job which she has because she wants to do something on her own. And when the other person who are concerned about her asks, "What will you do? You have a young child also." She's like, "I'll invent an app and make millions. I'll invent a new baby formula and make millions." The point is about making millions. The point never comes कि क्या करके millions कमाओगे.
yeah, yeah. I think I find this like, super hilarious. And then afterwards, I don't know, I think going abroad was extremely important just in terms of what kind of um cultures you get exposed to, and
Yeah.
like how relaxed the life becomes. I don't know, like for me, if I really compare the things in India versus the things abroad, is simply like how relaxed you get, how much more relaxed you get, like how much more um organized things are, like people standing in the lines and so on. And dude, I went to India, Kaushik, this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
In December, I went, had my eye operation, like my here on the neck and things like that, all these operations I had. And after I had my checkups, things like that, I go to Bikaner and I was like, I want to eat a kachori and I want to eat a samosa, so I want to like go and get that. I stand behind the guy who was ordering, and I was like, okay, like, next would be me. No. Another guy comes, and then some other guy comes, and then one more guy comes who just puts his hand in front of me and like, on the counter, and he's like, like do this and this. I was like, dude, like this I will be like standing till the evening. So then another time when I was at a dermatologist, same, all of this the same time. I'm at the dermatologist, and right afterwards is the this medicine shop. There was two women who were like ordering the medicines in the front. So like to give them some kind of privacy, I'm like standing, 2 or 3 steps backwards so that there's some kind of room.
Yeah.
And auntie comes in the middle, just like stands in the middle of like, me and them. And I was like, dude, like this cannot be real. And I was like, like, hey, auntie ji, मैं भी तो खड़ा हूँ यहाँ पे line में. Then, oh, okay, okay. And then, like, I didn't see. Like, absolute, like, dumb shit. My goodness.
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that I absolutely, like, these things, these tiny things irritate. Like,
Hmm.
you are doing these things because you want to respect somebody else's privacy, and you want to respect somebody else's time. And
Yeah.
I just feel like, that kind of like, that is not a concept there. And like for me, like these kind of like small confrontations, exactly, like that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
These confrontations lead to unnecessary stress. Confrontations on the road, confrontations in the public transportation, at the
Yeah.
bank, because we were in the university, and in the university we had a SBI branch, for the university itself. So where we were paying the bills for the Mensa, paying the bills for the hostel, things like that. All of that had
Yeah.
to be done in the this university bank branch. Like just all sorts of like nonsense happening there. Like you standing in the line, they going for lunch, or like for tea break. Exactly, like when there's not even time. Like there's no declared time when they go for lunch, when they go for tea break, so that you can plan things better yourself, and you are not standing or like waiting for one more hour to like pay the fees and things like that. So and these small confrontations I simply did not get here. So, and then life feels more relaxed.
It's also this question about you're not used to a better way. So the way you have, you accept it, right? So I'm not saying that, for me, maybe it's the difference between living where you lived and living where I lived. Yes, I had all those experiences which you also talk about, but for me, they were not as aggressive because maybe the number of people in Goa is not that high. So
Mhm.
the density is not that high because I know that in the green belt in north of India, it's very dense population, especially near the Haryana, UP belt and all of this. It's a very dense population. So there's a lot of opportunities for such instances to happen. But yeah, like I don't know. It's not that easy to say whether if they know that there is a better way to do it, they'll adopt it. I think it's also about a systematic change, not only from the person providing the service, the shopkeeper, the government officer, whoever it is, but also a systematic change in the way that you educate your population, right? The way you teach stuff in class. And today I was having this conversation about confidence, gaining confidence, social skills, all of this. And I asked a friend, do you think in any time in the 16 to 20 years that we studied when we were in school, were you ever taught how to talk to people? Were you ever taught how to interact with people, how to give a presentation in class? The reason that I used to be always called out to say that, oh, he's very good at speaking is because I spoke one line and people spoke zero lines. Doesn't
Mhm.
mean I was good. I will never put myself on a debate stage. But the reason they actually think I was a good debater is because if five people are standing on the stage and no one speaks a line and I speak one line, suddenly you're like, oh, you're great. But that shows the level of or the lack of such skills being taught in schools, right? Because what you see here, what I see in the West is if you speak with confidence, if you speak with clarity, that and it's not about language. People make a lot of mistakes saying that, oh, you're so fluent in English, that's why you can speak. It's not about language. Yes, that does play a role. If you can think much better, if you can think much clearer in, let's say, your mother tongue and you're not able to express that in English, that can hinder you. But at the same time, confidence is much more than just language. Confidence is about the way you proceed and where you project yourself, right? And the conclusion that me and my friend had at the end was, no, you're not taught these things. And that's why once you come here, it some people take a long time to adjust to that. Some people don't even ever adjust to it, right? And I think for me, the 2.5 years I spent working in a company where it was a company which is in the engineering services space. So a lot of the clients were not Indian. Most of them were either UK or Germany based. So there's always this corporate culture which was there in the company. Even though we were in a small place in Belgium, the corporate culture was still there. And for me, I fit right into that. And that gain allowed me to gain the confidence which I want. Because if I was coming to do masters right after my bachelor's, I wouldn't have the confidence which I have right now. The
Mhm.
Porsche engineering, the Porsche thesis which you brought up in the beginning, I would have never gotten that if I was the Kowshik of 20, let's say 2019 or 2020. It took all those life experiences to build up that and make me open. If you speak to my parents or any relatives, they'll say this is the shyest person ever. Till like 10th standard, I used to never talk to people. Right? I was very shy. I used to talk to the 3 or 4 people that I liked, and maybe 1 or 2 cousins when we meet in some family functions. But now the way like my day in the life video came out, and then a couple of other videos I was there on the channel, and when I shared this with my family, and they're like, wait, this is not the Kaushik that we recognize, because I was so open and so confident. That you gain with life experiences, right? That you gain when you are exposed to things, when you're taught these things. If you're never taught how to present yourself, how to behave in a diplomatic way, how to behave in a classroom, how to behave in front of a stage, and I'm not saying everyone should be good at it, but at least you should be exposed to these things, right? And if you're never taught this, how will you develop those skills, right? And I'm sure it must have been same for you also, because you're also coming from this, not so, I would say it's like tier one city. It's like you're in a place which is not I don't know what tier you want to call it as,
Yeah,
but
it's a small. It was a small city, dude.
yeah,
Um, you made some very nice points. And I think like you talked about exposure. What I also really think is like along with exposure, right? Like you have the nature and nurture story too, kind of like
yeah,
mixed into that. So like you have exposure, but then there are two kind of people. Like, one kind, they cannot be less bothered about what kind of exposure you're giving to them. Like they're going to go
ignorance.
back.
That's the difference, right?
Yeah,
Exposure is king, but ignorance is bliss.
yeah. So like they can still go back to their own thing. I think there are like two things which kind of like go hand in hand. One is like, of course, the exposure, but the second is also just um the need or the want, not even the need, the want of being just 1% better every single time, or 2% better every single time, just like
Yeah,
a little bit better than before. Like you said, like, previously, that your father was asking you that if somebody was better than you and were you better than what you did previously. I
yeah,
think like that's such an important thing to cultivate in oneself, that like, were you better than, like, or like, are you going to try to be better next time when the same kind of like situation comes? And I think then, Kaushik, that comes somehow like, it's closer to ambition also. Like, like you also want to only do these things when you are ambitious about the standard of life that you want to build for yourself,
yeah,
or the personality that you want to build for yourself.
yeah,
And I think like this also takes like two separate branches afterwards. The first branch is like you getting depressed because you are not at that stage right now. And the second branch is like you pushing yourself further and saying like you're not at that stage right now and you're going to
yeah.
do something to get to that stage now.
I think having so much fun having this conversation, because this is a conversation which either I have with my own self, with the 10 people living in my head, or 2 or 3 friends who on one random night will have a deep conversation. And the
Mm.
biggest thing which the best way I can put this is, if you were to meet the 5 years before version of yourself, would you be friends with that person? And if you ask me, I will not be friends with the person who I was in bachelor's. I will never be
Same.
the friend, because for me, right now, I choose friends who are open, who can talk, who offer up information but also absorb information, who are willing to share stuff. If you do not want to share anything, not even one anecdote about your life, you're not my friend. And I was that person when I was in college. I was not a person who was sharing stuff. So I will definitely not be friends with myself when I was in bachelor's. And I think, see, the way we think about these things, right? See, no one is teaching you this. I'm pretty sure that what you thought about your life, how you envisioned your life, and how you reflected on where you are and how you want to grow is not something you were taught, right? And it's the same for me also. I was not taught about this, but at the same time, you have to recognize that there are a lot of people who are not exposed to such ideas. They don't know that you should think about yourself and improve. And that's why I think whenever any person is having any sort of platform where they can tell something and influence, let's say even 5 people, should always espouse people to think for themselves. Should always say, don't do this, don't do that, that's a different case, but at least tell them, you think for yourself, reflect on yourself, see where you are standing, see, are you self-aware? That's the biggest question. Are you self-aware? Do you know exactly what every hair cell in your body is doing right now, right? There shouldn't be one thing which you do not know about yourself, which someone else knows better than you. Maybe the way you look and the way you present is something which other people can have a judgment about or an opinion about, but you only one person should know you the best, and that should be you. And it's, yes, it's difficult. I can understand, having had conversations with a lot of people who weren't exposed to such ideas. I can understand how difficult it is for them to, do this introspection, do this analysis, and improve themselves. But at the same time, once you are exposed, are you taking the opportunity? That is what comes, right? Are you ambitious enough, or are you at least open enough to take this as an opportunity and say, okay, 25 years of my life, I didn't know this thing. I know something better now. So why not at least use something from this and improve my life? Are you doing that? Are you improving your life? And one very important book, which I think I would like to recommend to some people who want to read, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I picked up this book, I think, during the pandemic, and he talks about something. If you're 1% better every day for a whole year, you will be 37 times better than you were when the year started. Imagine that, 37 times better, right?
Mm.
Let's say, I don't know, you are, but if the way he said it is, if you're 1% worse, then you are doomed, right? If you're 1% worse off each day, if you compound that, you're like what, 0.99 of what you were, or I don't know, some math. What is the basic idea
Mhm.
is compounding of good things leads to a lot of improvement. And like it doesn't have to be that you have to improve every day, but at least if you were to average out the last 4 years and say, did you do better in this 4 years than in the preceding 4 years, you should be able to say yes. Did you achieve some life goal which you set for yourself? Yes. Did you improve yourself in terms of the way you interact with people? Did you put out something good out in the world? Did you, let's say, help out few people in their journey or whatever? Did you leave a positive impact on the people you interacted with? That's the biggest question which you can answer for yourself, I think. And yeah, thinking about these things, I don't know, I always thought that I was a weird one to think about all these things, but it's good to know that you also have ideas, and there are
Of
a lot of
course.
other people to have these things. So
No, I think you do like I'm also really enjoying this because you said about like being friends with somebody 5 years the 5-year-old version of yourself like 5
yeah.
years back. I was an absolute loser. Like I think what 5 years ago, like at 24, the business was fucked up, and I chose the master thesis, Kaushik. I chose the master thesis of how to increase sales of digital products with marketing 4.0. And I was like, like I chose the title of the thesis as increasing the revenue. And it's been 3 months, there is no increase in revenue whatsoever. So what is going to be the master thesis? Conclusion is going to be doing XYZ things is not going to lead to increase of sales in digital products and things like that. And that was like a really really horrible situation. Confidence was an all-time low. Also for me, for example, um Alina, she was working in the Indian consulate in Hamburg, and
Mhm.
like she's making what, like 1,550, 1,600, something like that. 1,550 she was making like netto
Yeah.
at that time. And like, dude, I'm making like 300 euros on a good month, and I'm making 500 euros when I like really just make all sales, everything is on sale, things like that. And I
Yeah.
was like, like this, like, it's not really going to work out. Like, this is not going to be something which is going to be a viable business like afterwards. And going to the restaurants, and then all of a sudden, like, you have to see that, like, the woman is paying. Like, for me, like, all of these things were a nightmare. Like, for me, it was like, if you are the man in the family, you should be able to provide for your wife, for your children, for your parents, like, whatever, like, whatever kind of situation comes, you should be the rock which kind of like takes care of everything. And the situation I was in at that time was not fitting the world image that I had for myself at that time. And I think this is a great kind of measurement. I really never thought about it in these terms, that like, would I be friend with myself like who was like 5 years back or something? And I think not really. Like I would kind of like pity him a little bit, but I,
Yeah.
I really wouldn't be friends with him. Um and even though like it sounds harsh, but if you think about it, like, you at that stage also, like, I was trying to find people like who were always better than me. Like, I always tried to find friends who were better than me, like who were I don't know, like more social. They were like kind of better in the places where I was like absolutely lacking.
Yeah.
So I think like this is not a bad kind of like strategy to have, and that comes to the second thing, and that is like, always trying to improve yourself so that
Yeah.
you could find people who are good in one field, and in the field where they're not so great at, like, you're absolutely great there. And that kind of like really leads to very nice relationships, very nice
Yeah.
friendships, and like, crazy improvement.
I I want to pick up on one point which you said is you wanted to surround yourself with people more specifically who are better social, right?
Hmm.
Socially they were better. I used to be the person who used to avoid these people because I was like, this is too much for me. I was an introvert. I think still I am an introvert, but the social currency which I have has increased a lot. I can give more. I can become a bit more extroverted now than I was before. But I used to find circles where people were less social so that I didn't have to interact the way they did. I didn't want to go to parties. I didn't want to, go on some rando trips. This was not me. Right now, look at how that Pakistani meme, cricket meme is there, na, Zindagi palat gayi, Sajbaat ulta ho gaya, something like that. I have become the more social guy in my group now. I have become the guy who's like, let's go to this, let's go to that, never says no to any trip or never says no to any hangout session. And I have come into a group where it says, ठीक है नहीं करते हैं आराम से जल्दी नहीं है but I have become the opposite and I don't think I don't think it was a conscious choice for me. Like the question which I asked you, right? Are you good enough friends, or can you be friends with the 5 year old version of yourself, or you 5 years back? For me, that all of that was only driven from social interactions and only about how you project. But I think having this discussion is good because that goes to the broader point which you also picked. Are you also looking at what that person is doing productively, what that person is doing for a career? Can you also relate with that? Like you say that that person was a loser, not only in terms of social, maybe your social skills were actually good at that time, but you still wouldn't choose to be friends with them because of what he was doing in business or something like that. And I think it's important to have friends who are a good balance or a good optimum of both, right? They should be social enough. They should be well, I wouldn't say social mean doesn't mean you have to go and party every day. It just means that for the type of hangouts which you want, those friends fit it, right?
Hmm.
And they are people who will share and will also take in information which you have. Like some of the best friends which I have right now are not even living in the city where I am, but
Hmm.
we speak so much over, let's say, a phone call once every 3 days or over text chat, and there's so much more I share with them than with any person that I meet. And there are a couple of friends here, and any person that I meet here I share much more with them because of the characteristic of being open. Let's say, just you don't have to be open to 500 people, but you can be open to that 2 or 3 people, right? But at the same
Hmm.
time, you also have to find a balance between the social aspect and pursuits and ambitions and career and business and whatever it is. Like
Hmm.
they don't have to do the same thing as you're doing. They don't have to, let's say, have the same level of success as you are, but
Hmm.
at least they are driven, right?
Hmm.
They're driven to do what they want. Let's say a
Hmm.
person just wants to make pani puri for the rest of their life. Well and good. It's your passion. If you want to do it, it's okay. But make sure you are doing it from a point of being driven to serve people
Hmm.
pani puri, right? I can
Hmm.
be friends with that guy. That's not a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah.
I don't have to be a friend with an engineer only. I can be friends with a guy who sells pani puri as long as for him, selling pani puri is a passion and he will do absolutely anything which he can to make sure
Yeah.
that he does it in the best way he can.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. Now, Kaushik, if you take a look at the last 5 years or something, right? Like you said, like, okay, exposure is important, like, but what other factors you're going to like say that which helped you improve or like helped you completely change your life? Because the impression that I got from the day in life video was like, somebody like who came from India but like established a pretty independent life for himself, and more of an independent way of working, independent way of thinking. And this question is important because I see a lot of people, somebody who's at the age of 28, 36, they're sitting with their parents like in the appointment calls, and I'm like, and the 28-year-old guy, like the one I spoke to, like he's not even asking the questions himself. The mother is asking the questions. And at the same time, I also met somebody who was 16-year-old. He had a Google Docs file ready with the questions, And that I was like so happy about. Like I was like, dude, like this guy is so prepared, like, that he did his own work and there's no parent or something, like, sitting right next to him. But like the 28-year-old, when I was 24 or something, and that he is letting his mother speak, his father speak or something, that was ridiculous, right? So this kind of like, independent way of like thinking, and what kind of like improvements, like if you kind of like self-analyze yourself and you think, okay, like these were the things that I did, which kind of made me better every single year. Like, what were those things?
I'll answer the question, the broader question which you're asking, but just to the point of you meeting the 16-year-old guy, I think it was a year or year and a half ago where, on our Discord server where we talk about the emails, you shared a presentation that one student made, a presentation which was amazingly designed for that matter. And
Yeah,
it was a young student who was 18 or 20, and he
yeah,
wanted to show that to his parents to convince them why he has to go to Germany.
you're
I
right.
was, dude, I was depressed for a whole day. I'm like, I am 27. I cannot make a presentation to save my life. I suck at making presentations. And I'm like, dude, you're 16 or 20 or whatever you're, and you made a presentation, first of all, which even if I didn't want to be in Germany and I wasn't in Germany, I would still look at it because it looks so amazing. And
Mm,
secondly, for me, the biggest thing is I will talk to my parents. Yes, I'll not have points prepared. I'll just say I want to go to Germany and see where the conversation leads. I'm like, dude,
yeah,
you're so prepared. And I
yeah,
was floored by that. But
yeah.
coming to the major question which you asked, I think the answer to the question is there in the question itself. It's about being independent. I think when I was in the rat race about what I wanted to study for engineering, I wrote every exam that I could. Okay, I wrote IIT JEE, but I was not well prepared. I wrote BITS, but I barely got anything which was a good score. I wrote VIT, and that's the only thing which I was ranked somewhere decent. Not decent, I would say, but somewhere where I had a chance to get some seat. The only thing which I was good at was the local CET which I wrote, which I think I got 42 rank or something. So,
Mm,
but then you think that it's only 2003 or 800 people or 2000 people who write it. So, ठीक है, relative success, whatever it is, right? But the VIT thing, I went to VIT Chennai for I think they call it the counseling session where you allot seats based on the ranks. And by the time mine was like 19,000 rank or something. By the time my rank came, all the mechanical engineering seats were gone for the first round of this. The seat which I got was electrical engineering, and we paid the initial fees and we came and we were at my grandmother's place, and my dad had left, and it was up to me and my mom to decide should I go here or come back and hope that I'll get something in CET, because CET had not come out that time. So yes, for me mechanical engineering was the biggest thing which I wanted to do, so I was anyway going to say no. What my mom said was very interesting. I got in VIT Chennai. She's like, I don't trust that you can live alone, because till that point when I lived in Goa, I had no relatives close by. There was one aunt who lived like 50 kilometers away, but that's it. I had no relatives close by. So all my life, it's been my mom who's like a stay-at-home mom, and it's just been my mom, me, and my dad. So I've never lived alone. It's either my mom was at home or my dad was at home, right? I've never lived alone. So my mom had the foresight to say, I don't think you'll stay alone, right? And she's like, okay, we have relatives in Chennai, maybe we stay with them. But then again, she's like, no, I don't trust you to stay with someone and get along with them, because I know you. I live with you 22
mm,
years of our life, 18 years of our life. I know you. So she
mm,
said no. And then I came back, did the whole engineering in Goa. When I got the job, tell you, for 2 years or 2.5 years, my parents never came to Belgaum. Even the
mm,
first day that I went, they came to the station to send me off onto this. And I only went, set up wherever I wanted to. I had the help of a friend. I lived alone. Of course, I first lived with some roommates, but then 6 months later, I lived alone. And in the 2 years, my parents never visited. And I explicitly told them, don't come and visit. I want to learn to live alone. Right.
mhm,
And I think that's the biggest thing which I keep telling anyone who's asking me. Right. I have a cousin who's trying to come to Germany, but and he finished engineering and he's working. I tell him, you're working all well and good. If you actually want to work, find a job which is not in your home, which is not in your home city. Go somewhere else. Live 6 months or a year at least independent. When you become responsible for washing your own underwear, washing your own clothes, and cleaning your own room, and making sure that you know when your next meal is coming from and how it's going to come from, you will immediately learn the realities of life, right?
mm,
Especially if you live in a situation where, let's say, a graduate engineer in civil or mechanical engineering enters at 25,000 rupees, you know how to save money, right? Someone who's entering a computer science field at 10, 15 lakhs may not need to save money. So it doesn't know to save let the even pennies which you get, right? So that I think was very helpful for me of living alone for the 6 months or no, I think it was what, 2.5 years, 2 years or something before the pandemic. I lived alone. That helped me a lot. And then being exposed, like you said, all of these things, see, you can learn to be independent, you can learn to do these things, provided you know that this is a path that is more beneficial, right? And for me, the way I learned that was just by watching other people talk about it. I'll tell you, and this is gonna sound crazy for some people, my YouTube number of videos watched, they used to show how many videos you watched. Okay, this was something they did a few years back. They stopped doing that. That hit 10,000, and it hit 10,000 8 years ago, and the number of liked videos has been stuck at 5,000 almost 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, a lot of these videos are random bullshit videos. I was into gaming a lot of the first few years. It was all those, but there's a lot of videos which was about information.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of videos about people talking about their experience. A lot of information about people sharing their journey through science or their journey through engineering, whatever it is. It's just by looking and grasping as much information as I can. Like I can pull obscure references from some random podcast which I saw like 8 years ago and quote that to a friend because I was having a conversation because I consumed so much. And I'm not prescribing this. It's not a healthy way to live. Trust me, because you don't want to be sitting at 3 a.m. at night watching a YouTube video and your mom shouting, "Why aren't you asleep still now?" That's not a good way to live. But at least find those one or two voices which are better than you, which have achieved something in life. Take some life lessons from them. Don't think everything they say is gospel, right? Even I'm telling the people who are watching this video, don't take us for what we are saying. Do your own research, but just listen to these people to get a different perspective. That's what I say. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to listen to or you don't have to follow the philosophy that they do, but at least you can get a different way of looking at things. And that I think is what helped me gain whatever independence and confidence that I have. And if I were to give a joke answer at the end, a lot of people in the world are just bullshitting their way through, man. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
anything. So you also might as well bullshit your way through it. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, this works to a lot of, I mean, fake it till you make it kind of works to a lot of extent, provided you know what you're faking, right? You cannot fake something which you do not. Tomorrow, I cannot go and fake that I can perform a medical surgery or operation. I cannot fake that much, but at least I know I can get to a certain extent by just faking the confidence. And it's not about faking the skills, it's rather about faking the confidence which you have, right?
Mm.
And I'd like to end on, sorry for again going on a long rant, because
No,
these are
no.
thoughts which I've been having for a long time. There's this very famous line, right, which says, Jack of all trades, master of none, right? But that's not the complete quote. The complete quote is Jack of all trades, master of none, but is still better than a master of one.
Mm-hmm.
Learn different things, learn to do different things.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be really good at one thing. If because I growing up saw people who are very passionate about doing that one particular thing. I was never about that. For
Yeah.
me, it's just about exposing myself to enough things to figure out, okay, I like this, I like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I am a huge astrophysics nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think I'll actually go into astrophysics? No, not a chance. Like I know what my skill sets are, but at the same time, I can have a conversation with someone about some how galaxies are structured for like an hour or two because I am interested in those topics. Just show interest, be interested in different things. The more information about small things which you can gain, the more conversations you can have, the more you can relate to people, the more confidence you'll gain with that. And once you gain confidence, then living independently, working independently is not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. I think that's super interesting, Kowshik. And so about improvements. So how did you also get the internship at Porsche? Tell us the story for that too.
Yeah. Um, I'll tell you how I started my mechanical engineering. I said, I do not want to do programming at all. I was at the extreme. I'm like, I'm going to go away, far away from the computer as I can. Right. And this persisted through engineering, through working. And I said, I want to do fluid dynamics. And that's why I came here. Right. This is the question about exposure. My
Mm-hmm.
limited knowledge at that time said fluid dynamics is the end all be all. There's nothing which will excite me more than that. once I came here and we got through the first semester with some basic subjects. The second semester I was exposed to like, wait, I don't actually have to do CFD. I can learn so many different things within fluids, which is about doing experiments, figuring out how to process the data which you do in experiments or simulations, how to do it in a mathematical sense, all of these things. And then slowly I said, wait, there is an opportunity to do it with machine learning. I have now become a purely machine learning applications engineer in the engineering context, something which I would have never imagined myself to do. So, having had no programming experience, even 3 semesters into coming here, okay, 3 semesters into my master's, I still had no programming experience. But the way my course is built, there is one specialization project that you do, which is kind of like a mini thesis, which is 15 credits. You do it either for 3 or 6 months based on your registration. And I did that from like April or May of last year till November or December. And I think a few conversations when we were having on the behind scenes, I used to tell you that, oh, I'm very busy with my project. Can we do
Mm-hmm.
this later or something like that? And that is the only project which has got me the internship or the thesis for that matter. So what happens was I get this machine learning project which is applicable to engineering. And I already, by some coincidence, had built up enough basic machine learning theoretical knowledge and basic engineering theoretical knowledge through the course which I picked here. So this was a really good, let's say, mixture of the topics and stuff which came through. And I did the project. I did very well in the project. And I was not sure whether this is something which is a viable career. I don't know whether industries are doing this on a large scale, whether they are hiring people to do it. So this is where exposure helped. I found a student who's 1 year senior to me, who's also doing the same thing. She was doing her thesis at Airbus in Bremen here, and she was in the similar field that I was in. I'm like, wait, so there is a possibility you're telling me to do this in a company. So I used to constantly interact with her, ask her how did she go about applying, how did she find these companies? And because finding these companies, finding these positions is not easy. She gave me some ideas of what to do. She suggested me some positions. I prepared like crazy for those applications. And let me tell you, all those applications which I prepared for 4 hours, 5 hours, all got rejected straight away. Like nothing came of those. I made an excellent cover letter. I revised the cover letter 5 times. I gave it to an independent peer review kind of a thing for some from friend of mine. Nothing helped. Straight rejections. Whereas one random December night, I was sitting at 9:30 or something. I opened LinkedIn. I'm like, I'm feeling bored. I'm not sleepy yet. Let me just look what positions are there. I'm like, LinkedIn में कुछ मिल नहीं रहा है. Let's just open these 3 or 4 companies' website. So I opened Fraunhofer. I found 5 positions. I just applied with CV. I didn't even give my cover letter or something. I found BMW. I found 2 positions. I just applied. I found Porsche. I found 3 positions. I just applied. I didn't even prepare my cover letter. And this is not something I would recommend because a week later, a few of these companies wrote back and said, please upload all the documents, upload the cover letter, upload the transcript. I'm like, if you want me, ask me, I'll upload, but I'm not going to upload beginning. So of those 3, 4 positions which asked, one was Porsche, so I uploaded the cover letter, but again, I forgot about it completely. Cut to early January. We're just coming out of the Christmas vacation, and I had just had an interview with a Fraunhofer position which got rejected. And the very next day, I got a email saying that you have an interview on the 26th of January. I'm like, wait, what position is this? When did I apply for this? Let me open up and see. Ye kya hai kya? So literally, then only I figured out what this position was, and I did a little bit of my research what this position was, how I present myself. But in the interview, I tried to explain myself as best as I can. They asked me questions all the way starting from bachelor's, even before bachelor's, what led me to choose my bachelor's, and all the way to the current machine learning project. And the best thing which I will say helped me was not knowing a lot of things, but knowing what I did the best, right? I don't know, is there a better way to say this, right? You don't have
No.
to know 500 different things, but the
Yeah.
one thing which you know and the one thing which you have done, no one else should know better than you, except for maybe the professor who guided you, but no one else should know better than you. And for me, that was the thing. The project which I did, I knew it back and front. If you ask me any random question about the project, I could at least give you a passable answer for it. I'll say, this is how you can do it. And if there's a further question, this is how you can approach the further question. And I think that is what helped me because I asked them at the end of the interview, why they selected me for the interview, because they didn't give the results till like a week later. But I asked him why did they select me, and they said firstly it's about the technical university, because I guess for them that mattered, the project which I did. But beyond that, in the interview itself, they told me, you know exactly what you're saying. You're presenting yourself in a good way, and I think that is what helped. It's not about, I know 10 people in my batch who are much more knowledgeable about this, but it's that it's not about the knowledge which you have, but the way you present it, right? And I think that's what kind of helped me. And I'm not theorizing anything here, it's just the experience which I had. But yeah, it's a position which starts 2 months, 2.5 months later. It's a
Hmm.
thesis position which will kind of put a end to my master's journey, probably by the end of this year. So let's see how it goes.
But the thesis positions are generally ridiculously good because most of the times, if you do a thesis with a company, most of the times they end up like, assimilating you afterwards in the company. Like this is the case I've seen in many, many places. So I think like
Yeah.
working at Porsche, like if everything works out great, like dude, that would be extremely
The
nice.
There's the cart, there's the horse. Let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. No, that's pretty nice. And Kaushik, how much of this like because when we were like thinking about working on the GRE course, right?
Yeah,
Um, I saw a lot of these kind of meticulous way of working is
yeah,
not like this is not new. Like this is something which was already there.
yeah,
Like you making an entire document about your own experience or like
yeah,
your own way of how you prepared for the exam, what kind of
yeah.
things you did, when did you learn for things, making an Excel sheet for that with the dates when you were learning and when the dates you have to learn again and things like that.
Let me see if I can find it so that we can just have a look at that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll not take sole credit for this. Yes, I did make the document, but it was, again, teachers are so important for you, right? The teachers you meet in life are so important. And one German teacher which I had,
Mm-hmm.
she told me, document every journey that you're going. You never know. Someone will ask you 3 years down the line, some student, and you may
Mm-hmm.
not remember it. But at
Mm-hmm.
least if you have it documented, you can just look it up and tell it to them. And that is why I did it. And I think what you're referring to is this document which I have. Let's see if I can share it somewhere.
Yeah,
Again,
exactly.
this might sound crazy to some people, but this is like a 9,000 word article that I wrote of how I scored 331. It
Mm-hmm.
has everything. Like I gave some caveats of, you know, not everyone can do this journey the way I did it because of some privileges which I had. Then I talked about every step, like what are the resources which I collected, how did I start my journey, what are the steps which I took. Look at I mean, I think this is the table you're referring
Yeah,
to.
yeah, exactly.
Like this was how I was tracking my progress. Like, I mean, it's pretty clear, I guess, that red is not the great and green is the good
Mhm.
performance and all of that. And yeah, I was like meticulously going through this. And like I said, this is not something which is possible in everyday life. For me, luckily, I was in the pandemic, so I was able to build this skills up. But I wouldn't say it was something new. Like through my bachelor's also, there was some hints about these things, right? It's not like suddenly I woke up when preparing for GRE and suddenly I learned all these skills. No, there were some
Right,
things which
but
I
perfect.
already knew
Like
that. Yeah,
the this way of working, right? Like this way
yeah,
of working is not some is 99.5% of people don't work this way. So
no.
how did you is there a point that you remember that this was something that made you work a little bit more like meticulously on the things that you're doing right now? I don't know, some teachers, some like videos, some concept where you thought, okay, like, this makes sense that I should be doing things in this way.
Okay, so for the document which you saw and for the GRE stuff, there's just one person on YouTube which I found called Ali Abdal. He's
Mm-hmm.
like this very famous productivity guru. He was himself a medical student who followed all these techniques and studied. So just for the GRE, I put this into a much better format. But there's aspects of this method and this way of, studying, which I used to do all through my life. It's just that I never had put it in such a nice form. And I'll tell you, I think it's not just one particular teacher or one particular experience or just not one turning point. It's an amalgamation of everything that happened. And I think a good credit for that goes to my high school. I studied in a boys' school. It was like a Jesuit priest school. So very strict, very disciplined, all of that. And there we always noticed that we had our counterparts in other schools nearby, and we used to be friends because we lived in the same colony or something, right? And we always saw that in the internal exams, they always scored ridiculously high, right? Everyone's scoring 95%, 96%, and we are like the top rank percentage for us is like 83, 85. I'm like,
Mhm.
ऐसे इतना सारे बुद्धू थोड़ी बैठे हैं class में. I know people are genius in my class also. Someone should get some good scores, right? So during one of the, I think open house sessions they call it, right? Where on the after the exam results are announced, the report cards are presented and the parents can go and meet teachers and all of that. I think it's called open house or something. So there we asked one of my class teachers, I think around the 8th or ninth standard, my mom, a couple of moms asked, why aren't you giving more grades to the students? And they said it because when 10th standard comes, the internal grades matter for the final grade. So they asked it from that point of view. They said, see, the system that we drive is we ask the students to learn the textbook. In the sense, we are asking the students to go straight to the source and learn it from the source. Because when you're in school, what is the source for you? The textbook, right? The textbook is gospel. You don't learn anything beyond the textbook. But some people don't even go to the textbook. They just say, ki, this friend made this notes. I'm just studying those notes, right? And for us, it was always said, go to the source, find the source, learn from that source. And the way they built it up was when you come to these common level exams, the way they justified it was when you come to these board exams and all, people from all cadres of education are coming in, from all levels of education are coming in. So if we make it tough for you when you are in school, when you are in this environment, when you
Mhm.
actually go to an exam which is supposed to be easier so that everyone can answer, you'll score much better. And that's what happened. Like people
Mhm.
who never scored 90, suddenly when we finished 10 standard, they're like 8 people scored about 90. And we had one person who I think was like state third or something. I don't know. I'm not remembering it exactly, but like that. Whereas the counterparts which I had in these other schools, I remember we were studying about French Revolution or American Revolution, all of this in the 10th standard in history. And I saw that for a 10-page lesson, they had 100 questions which the teachers gave. Every line mein question hai.
Mhm.
And these people are only learning the questions. Okay, they don't know what is there in the textbook. Whereas we were
Yeah.
told, ये textbook hai, read it as a story if you want, read
Yeah.
it as a lesson if you want, do whatever you send. This is the source, learn it from there. So for me, always is to drive from going to the source and finding that information from there and then adapting the best way for me to study that. They never told me how to study. They just said, this is the information, this is what we are giving as our opinion based on that information, and then you find the best way to study. So for me, that was driven from wanting to study and always like that. And something when it comes to maths, for example, I remember an aunt of mine made a comment that you should practice maths so much कि तुम्हारा हाथ टूट जाए. Your
Mhm.
hand should break that much. And I'll tell you, I have never done that.
Mhm.
My parents used to shout at me because I used to study maths.
Mhm.
Can you imagine? I used to study problems, but for me, because it was intuitive, right? I used to understand those problems. For the same, for example, derivations. You must have done hundreds of derivations when you were in school and when you were in college, right?
Yeah.
Everyone approaches derivation ki ye starting hai, ye middle hai, ye end hai, ratta maro,
Mhm.
likho exam mein. For me,
Mhm.
it was never that. And I know where I'm starting. I know where I have to go. For me, even in the exam, my journey was figure out how to get there.
Yeah.
Never learn exactly what to do, right?
Mhm.
And when I was doing these other videos, that translates everywhere also. When I was doing these other videos, if I'm talking with Aditya, for example, or I'm just having a conversation, it's so easy for me. But if I have
Mhm.
to anytime put my thoughts onto words and then read off that, I'm lost. So for
Mhm.
me, it's good to know where you're starting, where you're ending, and then figure out your own way. And that figure out thing started for me, I would say, in, let's say, start of high school or something. And that's what led me through bachelor's, where I used to figure out the optimum way where I had to study. I
Mhm.
am not I'm not claiming that I studied everything in bachelor's, because we had something called as golden days, 5 days before each exam, where that's the only time you spend to study that subject. Okay. But those five
Yeah.
days, I used to focus a lot. I used to start off each subject by saying, pick out last 10 years papers, pick out last 5 years papers. Look at the most common topics which are being asked. Focus on those first. Then move on to the rest. Move on to the rest. Because it's an optimum way of studying. It's not the best way, I would say, but it's an optimum way. You're optimizing for something which is the more common way, I would say, right? Because let's say you are in mechanical engineering, and the most basic question they will ask is, what is a two-stroke engine? What is a four-stroke engine? right? No one's going to ask you what is rotary engine. Very rarely, even rotary engine has been around for like what, so many years, but no one uses rotary engines, right? So the more common one is two-stroke, four-stroke, because that's the more applicable one. So why are you spending 18 hours studying for rotary engine when the question is going to be asked about this, right? So all of this was incremental changes which happened through my journey of schooling and bachelor's. And I think what you saw in the document was just a culmination of putting all of that in thoughts, because I found a perspective from Ali Abdal which said, okay, this is a way for you to do it visually, because when something is visual, you can see that you're improving. Whereas for me, it was just about, in my brain, am I improving? Can I track where I was improving? And it's not a bad way, but at the same time, if I can see that I'm losing weight every day, for example, if my weight loss journey is there, if I see that I'm losing weight, then I'll be motivated, right? But if I'm just assuming, acha, I must have lost 30 kilos, I must have lost 20 kilos, then I never know, right? So it's an amalgamation of all different things which happened. And I guess
Mhm.
finally, to the base of it, I'm just wired this way. I cannot think any other way. This is the way I'm wired.
Yeah, I think like this is very interesting. I feel like would also be interesting to kind of like talk about specific maybe people who actually want to work the way you work don't need this information because they will somehow figure out a way of
Yes,
doing it, and maybe they will
100%.
just look further for improvements by, I don't know, looking at like productivity channels, things like that. I think like that is something interesting, but I think the want has to be there. Like I think you cannot really teach these things, or these advices are worth nothing to somebody who doesn't
Yeah.
want to improve themselves, like where the drive is not there, right? So
Let me give you an example of my German language journey. Okay, so like I
mhm,
told you, I studied French in school, and it was for 5 years I studied. And because again, I was from Tamil Nadu living in Goa, I already by default had to speak English because of school, Tamil because it's my mother tongue, Hindi because that's what a lot of migrant children used to speak, and Konkani because that's the local language. So by default, by the time I reached like first standard, second standard, I used to speak all of these four languages. Not to the best extent, but whatever I could. So language for me was easy, right? So I did French, but when it came to German, I noticed that I clicked the accent, I clicked the intuitive sense of learning a new language, but for me, vocabulary was restrictive, right? And the way I found it best to study vocabulary is not by reading books or something. That didn't work for me. I was bored by reading books. I didn't want to watch any films to learn these things. What I found best worked for me was flashcards. And the best app, again, through because of Ali Abdal, is I found Anki, ANKI, for
yeah,
those who
yeah.
want to look it up. And this is a very difficult app to learn. It has a steep learning curve. But once you get to that steep learning curve and you get past it, it is one of the best apps to commit anything to memory. And it doesn't work for everything. For an engineering background, it doesn't work at all. For a medical background, it works because you have to memorize so much stuff, right? And for context, Ali Abdal is a doctor by profession, so that's why he recommends it. But for me, I found, okay, let's just take that and see if I can apply it to learning German. And what I found was there's already someone had prepared a deck of around 4,000 words by highest frequency. I just used that. I used to do like 200, 300 cards a day. And that's how I was able to improve my vocabulary. And
Hmm.
to give you a hint, in my course, you start off with an A2. Um, you don't get enrollment unless you have an A2. But the expectation is you do a DSH 1. That is the Deutsche Sprachprüfung für Hochschulzugang.
Hmm.
And that's basically somewhere just above B2 level, I would say. So the
Hmm.
expectation is within 3 semesters, you have to do this. And I was able to do it. I finished my B2 even before I landed in Germany. And
Hmm.
that's because all through the pandemic I was sitting, I was doing these flashcards and learning so much vocabulary.
Hmm.
And it's also not only about the accent, the grammar, more about is, can you express all the thoughts which you have? Do you have the words to express all the thoughts which you have, right? And because I did this, I was able to express all those thoughts. And I'm not saying this is the best way to do it, but that's something which worked for me. And there
Hmm.
drives to my summary point, which I would like to say is, there are 100,000 different techniques to do something. I also did this mistake of finding every different technique. You just sit on the internet, you sit on YouTube and find 50 different ways to study one thing. It doesn't help at all. Trust me. Just find one thing which works for you. Pick only one aspect which works for you and then use it. Find a
Mhm.
different person for a different aspect of life. For me,
Yeah.
what helps with Ali Abdal is the productivity aspect of it. But I don't like to over productive, or let's say, I don't know, that's a word, over plan my life. He does that.
Mhm.
He plans every last minute of it. So that doesn't work. So I don't take it from him. I'm not criticizing him for it. I'm just not taking that aspect of my life from him. At the same time, I find someone else really like Casey Neistat is a YouTuber which I really love, and
Mhm.
he's the one who made me fall in idea with this concept of the city of New York.
Mhm.
I don't take everything from him, but what I take from him is this ability to just get shit
Mhm.
done no matter what happens. And I just take that from him. Just take these random things from people. It's not only help you in studying and preparing for exams and let's say learning German or giving the GRE. It's stuff which will help you in life. Find one or two things which you connect with from these people and just take that. You don't have to like everything that they do. Do you want to know what I learned from you?
You can tell me.
I really, we have, for those who do not know, we have a countless conversations once in every 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I really like your business sense. For me, growing up, education was the only thing, and working for someone was the only thing. So I never had it in me to think that I could eventually think about a business. But I get to learn so much from that aspect of you. Like I don't know anything more than that about your life to say that I like this of you, I don't like that of you. But for me, I don't care what I don't like about you. For me, I care that I like the business sense you have. And for me,
Mhm.
I try to learn as much as I can how to
Mhm.
handle people, we have had so many people come and go at the alumni team, right? And
Yeah.
how to handle these people, the emails that we receive. Sometimes we receive emails which escalate like anything. And
Yeah. Yeah.
initially I used to be like, Bharat, can you please handle this? Can you please handle this? And now I think barely one email every week I send
Yeah.
you,
You're right.
because I've learned to handle these people, handle these kind of situations. And this is stuff which I learned from you.
Mhm. Thank you so much for that. That was something nice to hear. Yes,
Yeah.
Koushik. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't know, like from you, like for me, this story was I just have this admiration for people who are independent, and I unfortunately don't see many of them. Especially, I don't see many of them coming from our country. So like you just like having this kind of like independence. All right, like today I'm going to go to Belgium. I don't give a shit. Today I'm going to go there. Today I go there. Like these kind of things I found extremely interesting, and also like being open to things right away. All right, like I haven't tried this ever before, but let's try it. And the only thing I have to lose right now is the time. And
Yeah.
in any case, I'm going to learn something from that. And like these kind of things are super nice, Kaushik. Like I told you about a friend, like who wanted to like start with me on another project. So like we were making translations for different languages of the
Yeah.
German course.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my Turkish friend, like he just like we were planning to like kind of make videos about this. He already translated the course. He already translated the course to Turkish German, and like he was not shying away from work. But somehow something happened, and one day I opened my Turkish YouTube channel for him that we like promoted and we did everything. And all of a sudden, like all the videos are deleted, and the channel name is somehow turned to XYZ something something. And I was
Hmm.
like, did it get hacked or something, or what happened? And turns out, like, he asked me, I think on 1st January or something, on my birthday, and I was anyways busy. I was like, on 31st December, like if he can delete his videos because he does not feel comfortable with them anymore. And I did not respond to it because I was like, this sounds a bit ridiculous. It's not like just one videos, like it's, I don't know, 12, 13 videos
Yeah.
where like I put my time inside, Aditya put his time inside, like we were all like kind of like explaining him, teaching him things. And like we went so far that you take somebody's hand, you bring him to a place where the only thing which is left is then kind of like a little bit more effort, because like nothing comes from effort. Like from like if you talk about the YouTube videos, like when I it was 8 months before I made my first check of around 70 euros or something, right? So like the problem comes then with people like who are not just consistent or like just give up too early, right?
Yeah.
I have you seen this image of this miner who is like digging
Yeah.
and
It's a
like
very common meme
yeah,
which
yeah,
comes around.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? Like so
Yeah.
he's digging, one miner quits a little bit too soon, and
Yeah.
right after that it's a fat diamond mine like that he can
Yeah.
find. and the other miner just like keeps on going. He finds the mine and
Yeah.
he takes the diamonds and he takes away. So
Yeah.
that was the story. So for example, like that was something I found extremely positive here, that like that we launched the free course for GRE, and we are planning to launch the complete course for GRE soon, and that like all of these things are like still progressing, like in a super organized way,
Yeah.
and like that there is no hesitation, like okay, like we don't know if things are going to work out or not, but we know that we
Yeah.
want to provide value. And that was something I found extremely interesting, that you even came back to the AW course, and you're like, okay, like these and
Yeah.
these things need to be improved, these things need to be changed, you change those things.
It doesn't matter whether the course comes out. I would be happy if no one watches the course also, as long as I get to make the course. For me, that's a new experience. I have gotten so much more comfortable with speaking to a camera. I remember
Mhm,
during the pandemic, we made a video to wish our grandmother or one of the cousins a birthday or something, and I
mhm,
was so stiff. I barely was anything. And I guess some people can watch this video also. On the Complete Course for Studying in Germany page, I have a testimonial where I talked about what value I got from this course. I look so bad in that course. I will never make a video which looks like that. But right now, if I pick up a camera, I feel so comfortable right now. And
mhm,
this is a skill which I don't know where it will be useful for me in life. Maybe
mhm,
I start a YouTube channel which works. I don't
mhm.
know. Maybe I become great at, or I become very good at presentations, which will help me land
Presentation.
some good position. I don't know. But this ability to put myself is something which I learned because of the course. So if nothing happens with the course, nobody buys the course also, at least that one
Mhm,
thing I can get, right? And another inside baseball kind of thing which I want to give hint to people is I have been an alumni for BIG coming this March 2 years. Can you
mhm.
imagine? It's been 2 years.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have seen what, one, two, three, four, five people come and go, four people come and go already. And I think only Maitreyi is the one who's been there longer than me to
Yeah.
do these emails. And the people would ask, why are you still involved in this? You're almost finishing your masters. Why are you still involved? It's two things. The first thing which I ever told you in the first interview which we had, or the call which we had, is why do you want to do this? Is for me, I didn't have people to help me out. The
Mhm,
course was something which helped me out, yes, but before that, I wanted at least one person to tell me it's going to be okay. One person to
mhm,
tell me you'll find a journey. And I want to be that. I don't know for how many people, maybe three people, maybe 10 people, maybe hundreds, but I wanted to be that and I still want to be that. The second reason why I continue to do is I gave a commitment, right? I gave a commitment to you that I'll do this. वो दैट सलमान खान डायलॉग ना, जब एक बार मैंने कमिटमेंट दे दी तो खुद की भी नहीं सुनता. So I'm like, I will say no to a lot of things, but the moment I say yes to it, I will do it. I am lazy. I'm lazy as anyone can be, right? But
mhm,
once I know there's a deadline, once I know there's
mhm.
a commitment to be made, I'll make sure to finish up. Even if I'm doing it in the 11th hour, I will make sure to finish it up. And this is something which you have to do, right? If you give a word to someone, and you have to have some value for that, right? Otherwise, people will not trust you.
Yeah.
And today, I think on our call, I was 15 minutes late. The only
Mhm.
reason which you said it's okay for 15 minutes late is because I've always been on time, and we always
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure
yeah.
that whenever we do the call, we are on time. And that trust
Yeah.
I have built, and that's what's helping me out. And that's what you have to do. You have to give yourself to the project which you're doing, to the stuff which you're doing, to such an extent where they'll say, okay, if I give anything which is new also, which this person doesn't know, to Kaushik, he'll figure out a way to do it. Or at least he'll have the ability to say, I don't know how to do this, please help me.
People who can work independently and who have their own brain, it's very less cautious.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just feel like, these are just a simple characteristics that somebody needs to have in order to simply go towards the managerial and CEO positions and things like that. Because most people are so scared of responsibilities.
Yeah.
The same story. Like I was speaking to my brother yesterday for the podcast, and he was like, I actually spoke to somebody, like, that who called his mother in India and asked which t-shirt I should wear. And it was like when he was 20, 21 or something. And
Yeah.
he was like, people are so scared of like taking decisions, because if they take a decision, of course, it could be right or it could be wrong. And if it's wrong, then there are going to be people who are going to come after you and things like that. But that is the place where you have to simply start taking decisions, and when things go wrong, you have to learn how to deal with them,
Yeah.
right? And there are so vainish people who actually are capable of that. So I think
Yeah.
like that's a great thing to have. And I was
And
actually checking your email, Kaushik. The first email
yeah.
that you sent to the academy email was 16th November 2020, and I sent you a Loom video for the letter of recommendation from employer.
Yes, yes, yes. Because
And
I
they
I
like
quit my
how fast.
I quit my job on in November. I think it was 20th of November. So 16th of
Mm.
November, I was trying to get it signed as much as I can, as quickly as I can. Yeah,
They're crazy, like how far things come. But
yeah,
this was very nice.
yeah.
I think this was a very nice conversation. And
Just one thing I would
yeah,
like to add is for the previous point which you mentioned about someone asking their parents about something, right? I hope people don't get this wrong. I
mm,
am someone who tells everything to my parents, right?
mm,
If I did something today, I'll tell them. But there's a difference between informing and relying on them to make a decision for you, right? Today I booked a trip to Brussels. I told you that I'll go to Brussels. I'll not be available for 2 days in December. I booked the trip, and then a day later I told them that I booked the trip.
mm.
Whereas if I was, let's say, in the earlier version of me who I'll not be friends with, I would have asked them about it. But that independence doesn't mean that you don't have to tell the people in your life what you're doing. It just means that you take the decision, but at least you can seek consult from them, or at least you inform them. I think that's why people say, oh, Bharat is saying don't ask your parents, but what about parents who have supported me all life? It's not like that. You tell the people, you tell them what to do, but the final decision is yours. You have to make sure that you make the decision because it's your life. It's not anyone else's life. It's your life. You have to make the decision.
Absolutely. I think the biggest learning lesson from this is become somebody that you are not friends with 5 years later on from now.
Yes. Yes.
And I think like that's a pretty nice lesson to have from this podcast.
Again, we have a moral of the story to wrap up our podcast. I think we're coming to a long time now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think like, Kaushik, for me, like this was a very interesting podcast.
Yeah.
Like, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I think we have spoken enough for this, for
Yeah,
the first, whatever this becomes later on, maybe we do. We have talked about doing a podcast on some uh, like current topics which is relevant to students, because we have so many ideas, we have so many conversations. We're like, why not put a camera and record the same conversations which we have offline? So I think we'll see what happens in the future. Maybe this picks up. If people like it, we come back and have a conversation in a few weeks' time.
absolutely. And if you guys have any kind of comments to this, just post in the comment section. We'll be checking it out and we'll be taking those comments in the next podcast first thing.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for
definitely.
Kaushik, and to everybody, we see you again soon.
Ciao.